You know, what if you could hold the entire history of the world right in your hands? I mean, everything. A year-by-year timeline from the very first moment of creation. Today, we're diving into an incredible attempt to do just that, using one single source, a 19th century Bible with this remarkable chronological index. This isn't just a book, it's a map of time.
But seriously, think about that for a second. How would you even start a project like that? Where's the beginning? What are the key moments, the turning points that define the entire human story? It's a massive challenge, trying to fit all of existence into one single understandable narrative.
Well, it turns out the folks who put together this Bible had an answer. It's called the Chronological Index, and you're looking at a page from it right here. It is a dense, incredibly detailed year-by-year story of history, starting from what it calls year zero, the creation of the world. It's this amazing document that tries to put an exact date on, well, everything. So let's jump in and explore this map of time exactly where it begins, with the age of the patriarchs. This is the foundation, the epic story that stretches from the very first humans to the beginnings of the people who would become the nation of Israel.
You know, what's absolutely striking when you look at this timeline is just the sheer scale of it. According to this index, more than 1,600 years go by between creation and the Great Flood. That's a longer period of time than from the fall of the Roman Empire to today. Then another 400 years pass before Abram, who we later know as Abraham, gets his call from God. This isn't just a quick series of events. It's a vast, sprawling history playing out over millennia.
And this slide really shows you how we're going to approach this whole thing. On the left, you've got the index. That's the raw data, the dates, the what and the when. And on the right, you've got the actual text of Genesis, the stories, the people, the who and the why. By putting these two together, we get to see how this timeline is built not just by years, but by these powerful human dramas. Okay, so let's zoom in on just one of those dates to see how this really works. The index marks the year 1872 BC with this really simple line: to prove Abraham's faith, God commands him to sacrifice Isaac. Just one little line item for a moment of almost unbelievable tension and meaning.
And that one date corresponds to this incredibly powerful scene, which is depicted right here in an illustration from the Bible itself. The story of the binding of Isaac. To the authors of this index, this is not just another date on a calendar. It's one of the most profound tests of faith in the entire story, a moment that defines who Abraham is and his whole relationship with God. And here it is, pulled right from the text, the climax of that story, the angel's voice stopping him at the very last second. For the people who made this index, the date 1872 BC isn't random at all. It pinpoints this exact dramatic moment that, in their worldview, sets the course for everything that's to come. So that act of faith really sets the stage for the next massive chapter in this historical map, the story of how a single family grows into a nation. It's a journey that goes all the way from slavery in Egypt to building a powerful kingdom with its own capital city and a magnificent temple. The index charts this whole journey with, again, incredible precision. It marks the exodus from Egypt in 1491 BC as the starting gun. 40 years later, the conquest of the Promised Land kicks off. But then, look at the huge jump in time. It leaps forward 4 centuries to 1055 BC, when King David makes Jerusalem his capital. This isn't just a list. It's a story of a long, tough struggle that ends in this moment of national triumph with the building of Solomon's temple. So the key takeaway here is this number, 480 years. The index is super specific that this is the exact amount of time between leaving Egypt and laying the foundation of the temple. It frames this entire long period as one single, divinely guided project, all leading up to what it presents as the nation's golden age. But you know how it goes with golden ages. They rarely last. The next section of the timeline documents a really painful and chaotic period where that unified kingdom gets torn apart by civil war and these huge foreign empires start to move in. So according to the index, right after King Solomon dies around 975 BC, the nation splits in two. In the north, you get the Kingdom of Israel, which is made up of 10 of the original tribes. And down in the south, you have the Kingdom of Judah, based around Jerusalem, with just 2 tribes left. This one political split just sets the stage for centuries of conflict. And in the end, the timeline shows the downfall of both of them. The northern kingdom of Israel is the first to go, conquered by the massive Assyrian Empire around 721 BC.
Then, about 135 years later, the southern kingdom of Judah meets a similar, really tragic fate at the hands of the Babylonians, who completely sack Jerusalem and destroy the very temple that had symbolized their golden age.
This whole catastrophic chain of events leads us to the final major era covered in this Old Testament index. The age of exile gives way to a brand new reality, one that's defined not by an independent kingdom, but by the rise and fall of massive global empires, all culminating with the arrival of Rome.
And just look at how fast power changes hands here. The index marks 536 BC when Cyrus the Great of Persia lets the exiles return. 200 years later, Alexander the Great's armies just sweep through the region, and by 63 BC, the Roman legions show up. The timeline meticulously tracks this whole succession of empires, leading right up to the date it gives as 4 BC, the birth of Jesus, an event that happens at the absolute height of Roman power, perfectly setting the stage for the New Testament.
And what I think is so fascinating is that the index doesn't shy away from what we'd call secular history. It weaves it right in. You can see it right here, entries for people like Julius Caesar and Herod the Great. The goal here was clearly so ambitious, to create a single, universal history, where biblical events and world events aren't two separate things, but they're happening on the same unified timeline. So, after walking through these 4,000 years of dates and events and empires, what does this map of time actually tell us? What's the bigger picture? Because clearly it's about way more than just a list of dates. What this timeline represents is a very particular and very powerful way of looking at the world. It presents history as a straight line, not a circle. It has a distinct beginning, and it's moving towards a specific destination. In this view, events aren't random. They're driven by divine promises or covenants and the real-world consequences of human choices. This narrative has been incredibly influential, and at its core, it's really this grand attempt to find meaning, purpose, and some kind of order in the often chaotic story of humanity.
And all of that leaves us with one final thought. This 19th century Bible gave its readers a clear, purpose-driven timeline to make sense of the world. So it really makes you wonder, right? What are the timelines that shape our world today? Are they scientific, economic, political? What are the key dates and the big stories that we use to make sense of our own time?